Hello, good evening. Welcome. This is Hot Edition on 3FM92.7. We're coming to live from our studios here at Desawe Kanda. We're also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond on 3news.com. We're live on Facebook now, on Twitter and Instagram as well at 3FM927. Connect with us across all social media platforms and let's get talking. This evening, I am Alfred Ocansey. Today, National Peace Council to summon key political actors to stakeholders meeting over rising temperature and the use of intemperate language ahead of the 2024 general elections. To tell you why the National Peace Council is stepping in at this time, some 20 clear months ahead of election 2024. Tonight, we'll also hear from the chairman of the Peace Council, Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfe's admonition for Brian Champong to act honorably. Meanwhile, NDC Director of Legal Affairs, Abraham Amaliba, accuses Inspector General of Police of evading their petition for the arrest and prosecution of the Agric Minister. We'll tell you why the NDC Director of Legal is making this particular claim. But earlier today, they were at the police headquarters, and this is what he had to say.
You are aware that he's on viral video to have said that the MPP will not hand over power to the NDC, come what may. And as lawyers, we are of the view that this comment or his comments on that day border on one, national security, and two, an affront to the Constitution.
Stay with us. We'll give you details of what Abraham Amaliba and indeed the NDC have been talking about in that petition to the IGP and indeed the Criminal Investigation Department as the CID of the Ghana Police Service later. Stay with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Also, external creditors hold crunch meeting over Ghana's debt as the country inches closer to securing an IMF deal. Stay with us. We get the details. We'll cross over live to Washington, D.C. for some updates with IMF and World Bank spring meeting ongoing. My colleague Abdul Sani is there for us. Stay with us here on Hot Edition. And also the UK government to stop active recruitment of health workers from Ghana and 53 other developing countries. Tonight, we analyze the impact of this move in stemming mass exodus of health professionals out of the country. And indeed, we'll get also the reactions of the Nurses and Midwives Association of Ghana to this latest development. Stay with us here. In the next 60 minutes, we'll have the latest in business, sports, and entertainment as well. Let's get into the details now. The National Peace Council is to summon all players in the political space by end of month on the second phase of the intemperate language guideline. It follows the summary condemnation of Minister for Food and Agriculture and a Betife Member of Parliament, Brian Champong, over what many consider as insightful comments the minister during the process of speaking on a political platform at Kwewu in Praeso in the Eastern region over the weekend. Said the NPP would never hand over power to the NDC, and as a matter of fact indicated they will employ all means to ensure that the NPP retains power in the 2024 election. In fact, the minister has received a lot of flack and criticism over the comment amid calls for his immediate arrest and prosecution. Chairman of the National Peace Council, Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfe, says such utterances should not be coming from someone who calls himself an honorable member of parliament. I want to take a listen to the chair of the National Peace Council on this particular issue and why he believes that the moment this statement was made, the security agencies should have been put on high alert.
And it's not helping us. You know, sometimes some of these things come as a reaction to what some other people have said. But because it's current, you are likely to forget the others. But for the Peace Council, we are compiling all of those. And we want to place it before all of them. That, look, these are the things you guys are saying. We all sat here and agreed that we need to be careful. And if all of us have agreed on those things, we expect all players to be mindful of what we have said and abide by those things so that we don't go out making statements that incite the public against the country. For as far as my capacity is concerned, if I call myself an honorable person, then I need to be careful with what I say and how I say it.
As the National Peace Council chair there, the council has also introduced a guideline for the use of intemperate language among political parties for proper dialogue, and the council would also be inviting political actors to engage on these guidelines. This is the chair of the Peace Council giving details.
We launched the guide on intemperate language. hoping that it will guide us not only in terms of political space, but also even in the media, how people speak and what they say and how they say. Subsequently, we've seen and had various footages of statements made by political actors from all the political divide, which is not in the best interest of the country. And so we want to use the opportunity we have now to appeal to them that just as we had a discussion here, we expect them to abide by the decisions we took. Ours is mediation. And then so we do that as much as possible. We bring them. And we think that when you appeal to the conscience of people, it makes much more sense. For instance, right now everybody is expecting you go have to condemn this. Condemnation doesn't solve any problem. But we appeal to the conscience of people. Is it right in your capacity as a gentleman to make this or that statement?
So that's Reverend Dr. Ernest Edujemfi there, the chair of the National Peace Council, also condemning, as many have done, the statements by Brian Achampong, the Greek Food and Agriculture Minister and MP for Abetife constituency. In fact, just for the uninitiated, this is what Brian Achampong said over the weekend, which has attracted lots of reactions.
I'm our opposition, who is starting to know. I'm our one day a day, I call through. I'm saying, the son is saying, you're possible to know. A Biden, she say, dollar every 17, about 10. Petrol every 17, about 9. Time on none my work from law. Sad time, no ever to about. I mean, chef on my board, Shay region board. I'm a brain channel life for NDC, Ebeku. Now, say, what did your margin say? What did you Patapa? Any person say about the year 2024 now? The bench of say we have the man. The bench of say we have the man. We have the man. Say about bad people party, I about Benwi. See about the platform so near the power. I'm a NDC. Esida. A quite PI at the first 2024 election. No, MPP bachelor Bemuno. Never so.
So that's Brian Achampong there, and this is the statement that has attracted a lot of condemnation and flack by many, including the Institute of Democratic Governance, IDEC, who are the latest who have also waded into this matter. My colleague Crosby Annan followed, in fact, the NDC legal team and some other members as well who petitioned the CID earlier today. Crosby is with me in studio. So what exactly did Abraham Amaliba seek to do with the petition to the CID?
Alfred, thank you for having me. So when the NDC legal team got to the CID headquarters, their first port of call was at the headquarters itself, where they were seated at the reception awaiting the clearance from the CID boss to enter into the office and then present the petition. So there's a staffer at the CID headquarters, so he was liaising between the NDC legal team and the office of the CID boss for Sinajewa Koduando. So after about 30 minutes or so, they were granted access to the CID boss, and then all 5 of the lawyers representing the NDC went into the office with the petition in their hand in an envelope, in a brown envelope, to present to the boss. So in a short while, they came out. It lasted for about 5 minutes, if you like. The interaction lasted about 5 minutes, but the media was not allowed access into the office of the CID boss. Right. When the legal team was entering, they were asked to leave their phones behind, so they didn't go into the office with their phones. So they came out, and then we attempted to have a word with the CID boss, Madame Faustina, but we understand she would not be willing to engage with us. So we followed the NDC legal team downstairs, where they also said they had a copy to present to the IGP.
I see.
So when they were going to the IGP's office to present the petition, we saw the IGP at at the compound of the headquarters. We saw him with some other officers engaging, interacting with each other. And then the NDC team told us they would not be able to go to him directly. They wanted to use the due process, so they went to the reception asking to speak with the IGP. They were directed to another office, 2 receptions to go to. When they got to the other reception, the second reception, they were told the IGP was not around. Mind you, this was somebody we had seen.
You had seen him just a few minutes ago.
Just a few seconds before entering into
that's the reception.
Yes, entering into the reception. And there was a little surprising. So they pushed and they were still unable to, speak to the IGP because they said he was not around. They had to leave the petition to at the reception, the second reception they went to. They called the IGP's office and then he was not around. So then they came out to address the press. So I'll tell you details of what they told pressmen when they engaged. So they said it was for them to arrest Brian Champion, prosecutor, then investigate him. They also were little confident that the investigations would be thorough because of a precedent. Remember, the Swami youth organizer of the NDC who was arrested for making such comments that the NDC will go all out to win the 2024 election regardless what happens. So he was invited by the police. He's still in court, as we say. So that was a precedent that the NDC referred to, that they trust that the police and the CID will do a thorough job.
Let's take a listen to Abraham Maliba when you spoke to him earlier today.
You are aware that he's on viral video to have said that the MPP will not hand over power to the NDC, come what may. And as lawyers, we are of the view that this comment or his comments on that day border on 1, national security, and 2, an affront to the Constitution. And as lawyers, we think that the police administration must be interested in this matter because as stakeholders in this democratic dispensation, we will not sit by for just one person to pass comments that will bring unrest in this country. So that's why we are here today, and we've submitted the petition to the CID boss. We had a copy for the IGP, and we thought we could have met him personally.
Before you went to the IGP, what did the CID boss tell you?
The CID boss indicated to us his appreciation of what we have done, and she was of the view that she would take the necessary steps, having received the petition. But once we were also going to serve the IGP, she will wait till we do that.
Did they confirm to you whether they saw that viral video of Brian Champion?
The CID boss did not say much. What he indicated to us was that he's happy we have brought the petition and they will work on it. As to whether she has seen or the police has seen it, that didn't come up. But in my submission, I said that we have attached a video in a pen drive, and that if she hasn't seen it, this is an opportunity for her to now see it.
What's your level of confidence in the investigation of all your desires?
We are very confident because the police administration, not long ago, gave a clear indication that they were not going to tolerate such comments, particularly when the youth organizer of Swami, the NDC youth organizer, was arrested and put before court. And as we speak, he's in court. And so we saw that as a mark of good leadership on the part of the police administration. And so what we are doing is not derogating from that. What we are doing is furthering what the police has already started doing. And so we are confident that having started this, the police administration by themselves, clamping down on such speech, they would deal with this matter as well. We are 5 years. It's a clear indication of the seriousness we attach to it. We are now going back to re-strategize and see the next step to take. But there are lawyers here who I will detail to make follow-ups on this matter.
2 questions from me. Do you think the IGP evaded receiving your petition?
Yes, in some way, because the officers who he was chatting with approached me and clearly indicated that, yes, we should go to the reception from where they will bring us to his office. But for us to get to the reception and for the reception to call his office, and we are being told that he's not on his seat is a clear indication of an IGP who was clearly evading our document.
Last question. You present the copies to other state agencies. What do you expect from them?
Indeed, we feel that this is a matter of national interest. This is not a matter only for the NDC. When this matter came up, you heard civil society organizations speak to it and condemn the comments. And so we've copied the Speaker of Parliament, the Peace Council, the House of Chiefs, now the National House of Chiefs, Catholic Bishop Conference, the Christian Council, the Chief Imam, and of course, the media houses.
So that's Abraham Amaliba, the Director of Legal Affairs of the NDC at the police headquarters earlier today, and my colleague Crosby Annan was there with him. Now, essentially, they couldn't meet the IGP to also submit their petition to him. But after speaking to them, did you get an indication that they're going to try again to meet the IGP maybe tomorrow, or they'll just close that chapter?
So the petition was submitted to the office of the IGP, but the beef is that the IGP was present there, but they were told he was not there, so they couldn't hand over the document to the IGP personally. But if you're looking in the essence of the document presentation, the IGP is not supposed to receive all presentations himself. So to a certain extent, to a larger extent, the petition was presented to the office of the IGP, by extension the IGP, but not the IGP in person. That is their beef. We understand in the coming days, the other copied agencies or institutions in the letter, they would go to them and then hand over.
Who are these institutions? So you have a copy of the petition?
A copy of the petition will be presented to the Peace Council, will be presented to the Catholic bishops, and just as he mentioned, about 7 other institutions were copied that the petition by the NDC legal team should reach, either in person or, representatives, just like was the case of the IGP Alfred.
Fantastic. Crosby, thank you so much for the detail. Noble Crosby and there. But the NDC 2024 flag bearer hopeful, John Mahama, former president, has waited in this urgent particular issue, the supporters of the party, to ignore the comments made by Brian Champon and some NPP activists addressing party supporters at Akropong in the same eastern region where Brian Champon made this statement over the weekend. John Mahama said no amount of intimidation should scare the NDC supporters going into the 2024 general elections. He said the NDC will do its part to ensure that the elections are free, fair, and transparent. Take a listen to the former president.
Nyame ne sihene na sem nyame ya ne hihia nipa bi antimi sesano ensema ebin mo kane de mamfa mo adwen to so ebise nyame hihie me kwa sorry na me ogidi me so me bokoto dwe na me bompaya nyame kasa kire me kakra na nyame se NDC yemre aso na tumi no de ahye ensa nyame ya ne hihia tobe bi antimi sesano enti yende engusu bompaye yen jiga na fodi se.
In fact, that's the former president, John Mahama, there, same in the Eastern region. He's there on his campaign tour. But a number of institutions and individuals have indeed waded into this as well, calling on the Ghana Police Service to investigate the comments by Brian Champon, the executive director of the Institute for Democratic Governance, IDEC, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, is also calling on the Ghana Police Service to invite and question the Member of Parliament for the Abetifi constituency, Brian Champon, over his claims that the ruling NPP, as you heard earlier, will never hand over power to the opposition NDC. Dr. Kwete believes questioning the MP over the comments will assure Ghanaians that the Ghana Police Service is consistent when it comes to inviting politicians who make reckless comments. Mr. Champon, addressing party supporters at Emprise on Saturday, said the ruling NPP will never hand over power to the opposition NDC in 2025, and that they will do everything possible within their power. It's not just IDEC that's speaking about this. In fact, a founding member of the NPP, Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, has also slammed the Member of Parliament for Betifi, as a Food and Agriculture Minister, Brian Champon, for claiming that the ruling NPP would hold on to power at all cost. Mr. Champon, as we've indicated over the period, was addressing the supporters over the weekend, making that statement. We have a copy of Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo's statement right in front of us here. If you go on our Facebook page at 3FM92.7, you'll see the details of this statement by Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo. He also stated in this particular statement that we have, and I quote, "The tantrums over the weekend in Kweo by Brian Achampong, a supposed member of the New Patriotic Party, a one-time national security operative who has recently been confirmed by Parliament of Ghana as a Minister of Agriculture, is unfortunate and in bad state." Nyaho Tamaklo continues, "I am writing as an elderly citizen of Ghana and a founding member of the New Patriotic Party who cannot sit down unconcerned in the face of such destructive political statements by some recalcitrant elements in the political class. Without a doubt, the statement by Brian Achampong can lead this nation into destruction beyond the extent the Ekufuor government has caused." The statement made recently by Brian Achampong during the NPP Unity Walk at Kweo on the 8th of April 2023 is not only irresponsible but also violent and destructive. Nyaho Tamaklo continues in the final part of the statement. He says that the statement that is senseless and uncalled for by Achampong, a cabinet minister of the Republic of Ghana, to have said that the NPP government will not hand over power to the NDC even if the opposition wins, and that whichever way we will employ court to ensure NPP stays in power beyond 2024, we will employ, is not only directed at the NDC, but it is a dangerous threat to our democracy and the 1992 Constitution. He concludes this statement, I'm talking about Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, stating that "I would like to assure Brian Achampong that some of us will not sit down unperturbed as he seeks to press the destructive button of the Fourth Republic, and we are resolved in our determination to protect the Constitution and democracy of this country." Let's go on to the telephone now, and Dr. Asante is a senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana, Legon Political Science Department. Dr. Asante, thank you so much for your time on Hot Edition. You've previously quoted to have described this as an empty threat or a political gimmick that has no substance, but the NDC doesn't think so. IDEC doesn't think so. Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo also doesn't think so. He believes that the Ghana Police Service must put some currency on this statement and get some details. Does it change your position at all?
Never. I still maintain the position. Let me explain. I will look at it from various perspectives. Right. One, we want to look at it from point of view of propaganda. Ghanaian politics is beset with issue of propaganda. That anytime there is election or we're about to have election, political actors or political parties adopt propaganda techniques. One of them being what we are looking at here, which is that appeal to fear, where they make statements that, as it were, intend to put some fear of God in people, and then it creates all manner of behavioral change. All right, that is their belief. Let's look at that one. If you look at the statement that Mr. Achampong said, in the light of what I'm saying, you agree with me in that even if it is fear that you are putting into people, will it influence them to vote for you? The literature doesn't support that people vote based on fear. No. We have seen threats. We have seen hate speeches. We have seen language that undermine, normal conversation, very, decent conversation. But they don't influence voter choices at all. It's not part of the literature. Two, if you look at, I want to look at it from the point of view of power dynamics. In power terms, we're saying that there is always the subject and the victim. The subject is the one who causes the victim to do his bidding. If you are using power that you have because you are in government and you want to influence the voter to do your bidding, all right, to influence him by powerful argument, by your record, and by the things that will endear to his or her heart so that he can consider you and vote for you. But threats or, his speeches and all that do not influence the voter at all. But what is more, that when you talk about the statement that he said, that they will not, hand over power to the NDC. All right. Let us assume that the NDC wins the election, another party wins the election. All right. Are we saying that we are sure of who is going to win the election? For which reason you want to really say that, yes, I'm going to win, and for that matter, I am the one that I'm a recipient of this information.
Dr. Sasante, the point here is...
Let me please hold on a minute. If you look at the statement that the gentleman made, he himself was afraid, so he could not come categorically. Come and tell us that if NDC or CPP or any of the party wins the election, we are not going to hand over power to that party. Then you have concluded the act. Then you have defined the threats. You have come to the end. You are telling us that this is going to be the policy of the government. Then you are in the policy realm.
Okay,
right?
But Dr. Sasson, the point I wanted to make here is that, I mean, let's face the reality.
Yeah,
you and I have had...
Will government accept this as a policy, that the government intends as a policy not to, hand over power when NDC or any party wins the election? They are not going to hand over power. Can the government say that?
Well, the greatest threat of the NPP is the NDC, and you and I have had conversations about the duopoly that we have and not a multi-party democracy. You know that for sure. So if he is saying a specific statement making reference to the NDC, is because they are the most potent opponent going into the 2024 elections.
The more important point I'm making on that score is that, look, yes, we know that we are operating a two-party system. So if it's not NDC, it's MPP. That's fine. But what we are saying is that when you push that button, it goes into policy. Are you saying that statement is a policy of the government? Are you saying that? Can government also come up boldly that is our policy? They are not going to hand over. And would the citizen allow that statement to stand? Well, then look at even the international community, IMF. You are going for funding, and you think they are going to put their resources in the country, try to stabilize it. And when you have lost election, you are saying that you are going to shortchange the voters. You are not going to allow their decision to stay. Who is going to allow that? Are you with me?
Yes.
So is it the policy of government? And I want journalists to find out from government whether it's a policy of government. And public policy is what government decides to do or what not to do. Is it a policy? So when you look at it, you realize that it's an individual, statement that he made, which doesn't, support anything. Come to look at it again. If you look at all these things, my understanding is that, look, it is when you don't have message, then you begin to issue threats. I call them dail threats, because if he is that courageous, he would have come to the end of the road saying that we will not give power to NDC when they win power, or will not give power to any of the political parties when they win power. Then you yourself, you are very bold, and then you have come to the end of the road. Has he been able to make that? It is just much ado about nothing, because when you look at all these things, it tells me that, one, fear has gripped him already, all right? That he is afraid that his party will lose power. Fear has also gripped him to the extent that now, instead of using dialogue, powerful argument to canvass for votes, he is now using threats, using language that is intemperate, that doesn't support anything that the voter requires. But let us remember that to be able to win elections in Ghana, it is not threats. Nobody has won election in this country based on threats. There is no literature on that. The people have won based on what messages that were churned out to them. And the first and foremost message that influenced voter choice is the economic message. All right? Followed by what? Infrastructure development. People want to have them in their areas, as the Constitution says.
Okay, Dr. Sasante, I think I get the point, but you see, and finally, maybe in a minute, and then we'll round it up. So you talk about the influencing factors of an election, and we know, as you have quite eloquently stated, the message, the campaign based on, and then the strategy. But you also know that regardless of the message and the strategy and the manifesto, violence can actually also call people to either not come out to vote or, as it were, create an atmosphere where there could be possible rigging. I mean, there are so many ways that election outcomes are determined, not just by the message. It could be by rigging. It could be by an atmosphere that is created by violence. And so, beyond the political lenses that you've analyzed this, would you also agree with others who say that the security agencies must place some importance on this matter and not to wish it away as an empty threat, as you want us to understand?
I do insist. When you look at the things that influence voter choice, threat is not one. It's not one. Otherwise, you are telling me that anytime there is election, and you threaten, you are going to win the election. We saw that in 2000, where people threatened this country. Nothing happened. The Rawlings time, and this lost 2000, all right? Come to look at 2004. People said that this country was going to be on fire. It's going to turn into Liberia and the rest of them. What happened? Those threats never, affected voter choices. People went out and voted in their number. You saw last election, shooting took place in some constituencies. All right, people stood their grounds and still voted and expressed themselves in the way that they did. And so, yes, these are some of the little things that come into the political equation. But I tell you, they don't matter at all. When the people rise up and they say they want to change government, nobody can stop them. That's the forces of democracy. It will keep everybody to life. And there you see the power of the people. When we have counted in this constituency and you have lost, we go to constituency B and you have lost. How do you change, the decision of the electorate? It can happen because, after all, the people themselves who want to change the government or who want to change any party in power will be vigilant to protect their ballot from the beginning to the end.
Dr. Asante, I thank you so much for your thoughts. Connecting, I appreciate it. And that's Dr. Asante connecting with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Remember, he's a political science lecturer, senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. Share your thoughts with us. We're live on at Facebook 3FM927, on Twitter and Instagram at 3FM927 as well. Connect with us. Let's get talking. A number of you sending us messages on this matter already on Facebook at 3FM927. We're getting to it shortly. This evening, an economist with the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Patrick Esuming, says a proposed meeting between Ghana's bilateral creditors could significantly aid the country in securing the $3 billion IMF deal. According to him, Ghana is likely to reach the deal by the end of April if talks between the creditors end conclusively as planned. The Paris Club is expected to host a meeting with China present at the ongoing IMF and World Bank spring meetings. We'll hear from Dr. Esuming shortly. But first, here's a report by my colleague Noble Crosby-Annan on what's happening at the IMF spring meeting so far and why Ghana is confident about getting the IMF board's attention in the coming days.
After months of intense debate on various public platforms in Ghana over the dire economic situation in the country, the Akufo-Addo-led government finally sought a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. On the 1st of July 2022, the government of Ghana formally wrote to the Bretton Woods institution concerning its decision to engage the latter for a possible financial bailout to restore macroeconomic stability and safeguard debt sustainability for the country. Following the July 1st formal application of the government of Ghana to the IMF confirmed the receipt of Ghana's application for support. Then came a team from the Bretton Woods institution to Ghana on the 6th of July to commence negotiations on July 7. After successful negotiations and reciprocated visits, the government in December 2022 reached a staff-level agreement with the fund as part of processes leading to a bailout. Days after launching a bold domestic bond overhaul, which was a requirement, Ghana continued in a quest to pursue the $3 billion loan deal with the International Monetary Fund. But domestic resistance to the bond revamp threatened to stall that effort. The to-do list for Ghana's embattled government was long, pushing through a domestic debt exchange without hurting its financial system, negotiating restructuring of $13 billion in international bonds and executing spending cuts and tax rises. Overseas, investors have welcomed both the local debt exchange, which aims to swap bonds for longer maturities, cut interest rates and pause interest payments until 2024, and the IMF deal, which still requires board approval to help address Ghana's worst economic crisis in history. The Labour Front was agitated for weeks, nearly months, but government eventually found a way and tempers were calm. As part of efforts for Ghana to increase its tax net, to put it in a better position to obtain the loan from the IMF, government proposed 3 taxes. After the back and forth in Parliament, the House approved the bills. The only stumbling block to Ghana seeing the end of the IMF requirement tunnel then became China. Ghana needed a debt relief from China. Experts predicted tough negotiating processes because of China's posture. But the desire for China to deepen its relationship with Africa and Ghana in the face of a new scramble for Africa by the West, plus the call by the IMF for Ghana to speed up debt relief processes for debt-stricken countries like Ghana, caused China to soften their stand. This was corroborated by Ghana's Finance Minister Kenneth upon his return from China. As Ghana hopes to take a big step towards restructuring its $58 billion worth of debt this week, with its bilateral creditors meeting on Tuesday to discuss whether to approve enough relief to unlock a $3 billion bailout. The IMF board approval may just be a few steps away.
So that's a report, a comprehensive one indeed, by my colleague Noble Crosby Anand there. This is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're also live on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond. We're live as well on 3news.com, on 3FM 927 on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And let's get talking. Now, we're monitoring quite closely what's happening in Washington, D.C. We'll cross over shortly, where my colleague Sani Abdul Rahman will be connecting with us on the happenings there, here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. But I should really be aware, Ghana stopped repaying most of its debts in December 2022 and reached a preliminary deal with the International Monetary Fund on a rescue package in the same month of December 2022. But the IMF support is dependent on Ghana meeting a string of conditions from what we're monitoring, including measures to raise revenues through a rise in the rate of value-added tax, tariff increases, and that's what we've seen Parliament approve a couple of weeks ago on public utilities, and an end to central bank financing of government. In fact, the Bank of Ghana has indicated that they are the ones who have actually helped the economy not to collapse, even when the finance minister is on record to have said that if we do not get an IMF deal by end of March, the economy will collapse. The Bank of Ghana said they had to step in. What the IMF is saying is that as part of other conditions that government has to meet, the central bank has to end financing of the government budget. The fund also asks Ghana to make progress on restructuring its domestic debt. In fact, Ken Oforiatta said the fund's conditions had been met, and those are literally all done. So he's quoted as saying that they are on the next step. The restructuring talks are being closely watched by other low and middle income countries who are in or at the risk of default. So, for instance, Zambia defaulted on its debt in 2020, and its debt restructuring, on which a $1.3 billion IMF program depends, has also stalled amidst disagreement amongst its creditors. So that's the Zambia situation there. We're monitoring Sri Lanka as well. They defaulted last year and finally won the backing of the IMF for a $3 billion bailout last month. In fact, a breakthrough in Ghana's debt talks could raise hopes of faster workouts in the restructuring of other countries' debt in the future. The IMF and the World Bank have also warned that a third of developing countries, including about 60% of low-income countries, have debts that are unsustainable or in danger of becoming so. So it's a very, very precarious picture that the IMF has painted so far. Let's connect with Dr. Thuy Champong. He is an economist and political risk analyst. Dr. Thuy Champong, thank you so much for connecting with us here on Hot Edition. First off, what's your own reading of the posture of the creditor committee members going into the meeting in Washington, D.C. As we speak now?
Have been coming through are largely positive. So we saw a couple of weeks ago the finance minister going to China and having some conversations with them on the side. And then we've also seen the formation of the formal creditor group, which includes China, but also includes the Paris Club members in that negotiation process. I think it's also important for us to recognize that the IMF told Ghana that what they require are financing assurances. So some written statements coming from all the creditor groups saying that they're going to provide Ghana some form of debt relief or some form of reprieve going forward. And we have picked up signal that these talks are actually going relatively smoothly, one. But number two, also, even within the Paris Club, so these are the 22 countries that are largely the most developed or advanced in the world. The current member or the leader or the host, rather, of the club is France or the French Treasury. And again, the statement coming through from them was to the effect that they are doing everything within their power to reach an agreement on the commitments or the assurances that are required for Ghana now to go to the IMF board with its program and subsequently get the approval. So from where I sit, I think it's the developments are largely risk positive, and they do increase the likelihood that we could actually get a program towards the end of the month or sometime in May.
I see. Pretty interesting there. But how much of an impact or influence has the favorable comments, for instance, by the U.S. and the IMF chair herself had on Ghana's engagement with the International Monetary Fund for the program? Because of what we've seen so far, the comments, and you read this from, for instance, the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, was also quoted to have made some favorable statements, Dr. Tio Champong.
The Fed chair, she traveled to Zambia earlier in the year and lent her voice to the calls for especially, China to be a part of the restructuring process and fast-track things for countries like Ghana and Zambia. I think since those announcements and since that kind of push from the US, but also let us not forget that we also have had a strong push by our respective governments as well in terms of sending delegations to these countries, particularly China. They've all largely helped in bringing the different sides to the table and then start the conversation around, what each side is prepared to offer to countries like Ghana. So I think there's been a significant shift in terms of the positioning or the posturing, especially of China, and then also the Paris Club members. And that then means that we should see this translate into some, commitments in terms of the financing assurances that Ghana, or you can even add, Zambia would need to take to the IMF.
Dr. Tio Champong, thank you so much for your thoughts on the happenings in D.C. And we're keeping a close eye on how things are playing out with the IMF spring meeting. And Dr. Tio Champong is a political risk analyst and economist as well. It's time for business. It's some 40 minutes to the hour, 6 o'clock, and Anekia Mensa Abarampa is here with the latest in business. I know you have something coming through from DC.
Right, Alfred, not far from the conversations you've been having with Dr. Tio Champong. We'll be reaching out to Sani in Washington, DC to give us some updates. We understand that there's a crunch meeting for the external creditors, and China is pulling another one. They refuse to co-chair this bilateral creditors committee. I'll be telling you more in the next few minutes.
Super.
Right. Right, so let's get on with business. And good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on the business segment on Hot Edition. My name is Nana Ikuya-Mensah-Brampa. And Ghana's external creditors are in a crunch meeting, as I said some few minutes ago, in Washington, D.C. to discuss possible debt reliefs to support the country's bailout requests from the IMF. The meeting, which includes China, is looking at the parameters that would guide the engagement of the committee. My colleague Sani Abdurrahman is in Washington, D.C., and he joins us with some updates. Sani, what can you report?
Well, quite a crucial meeting for Ghana's bailout request, which is before the board of the, which is in the consideration stage and possibly awaiting a board approval to get the much needed bailout. What we know so far is that the Paris Club and some of the members of the External Creditor Committee have been meeting. They are trying to iron out the parameters to guide any possible debt relief they may be granting to Ghana as far as the bailout program is concerned. But quite worrying, we are learning that China is unwilling to co-chair the Creditor Committee. Of course, we know the Finance Minister requested that China should co-chair the committee, and that should be a sign of goodwill and China's willingness to support the debt restructuring conversation. But quite unfortunate, we are learning today that China is refusing to do that. The Finance Ministry has been tight-lipped over what has been going on in the meeting, but it does appear that the members of the Paris Club are finally willing, as they have been indicating, despite the challenges that we encountered some time back. They are willing to have the conversation and look at what they could offer to Ghana to support this program. So essentially, on the sidelines of the spring meetings, the officials from the Finance Ministry have been busy engaging these creditors and looking at what they could secure as far as debt relief and finance and assurances are concerned to help support Ghana's bailout request, which is before the International Monetary Fund.
Right, Sani. So we also learned the finance ministers of the G7 met today. What information do you have on that particular meeting as well?
Well, the finance ministers of the G20 countries have just ended their meeting, also looking at the financing issues around the world. You are aware higher interest rates, which resulted from central bankers around the world trying to fight inflation, has resulted in the cost of credit going up. And that is some sort of squeezing that is not helping the economic recovery in developing nations more especially. So they've been looking at how some of these challenges can be addressed, how some financing opportunities can be unlocked to help developing nations as far as economic recovery is concerned. So largely, these are the two things that have dominated the meetings here. The next few minutes, we're going to have a presser to get to know what went on in the meeting and how the G20 finance ministers will be collaborating to help address the financing issues, especially as we are seeing the difficulties in developing nations.
Right, that was my colleague Sani Abdurrahman joining us from the spring meetings of the IMF World Bank in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Sani, and I'm sure subsequently we'll be bringing you more on happenings at the spring meetings. But away from that, the Chamber of Corporate Trustees says confidence in the bonds market will take a while to be regained following the impact of the domestic debt exchange program. According to the Executive Secretary, Thomas Esso, government bonds cannot be described as risk-free due to experiences on investment recently.
The textbooks that we all read told us that sovereign bonds are risk-free, but all over the world we have also experienced some debt exchange programs that have told us that it cannot be totally risk-free, as we all know. So I believe that we will all go to the markets with at the back of our head that even though they will be risk-free, mentioning attached to government bonds, we know that when certain programs like the domestic exchange program that came on, then the bonds cannot be risk-free. So we are all going to invest. Let me say that as investors, we always want to look at the risk return trajectory to see that if you are taking on a certain risk, how much returns can we get for that risk. And therefore, like I said, we cannot totally and wholly classify government bonds again as risk-free, because the experiences that we have had globally from other countries and Ghana points to that fact again. And therefore, I don't think that you can go to any market and expect that there will be investments or there will be asset classes on the market that are risk-free. I don't think.
And that was Thomas Eso, Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Corporate Trustees. And government is being encouraged to drastically reduce the cost of doing business at the ports as a means of driving back traffic. This follows concerns by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority about the reduction in ports traffic, which has resulted in significant loss of revenue to the state.
When cost of doing business is very high, it induces more practices that may not help, or simply it will not make your country attractive for business. And that's exactly what we are facing now at the ports. If we are talking about cost of doing business, then we have to prune down the long list of cost of doing business at the port. It's as simple as that.
That was President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, Dr. Joseph Obeng. Just before we go for sports, the UK is set to be one of the worst performing major economies in the world this year, according to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. It says the UK's economy, in terms of performance in 2023, will be the worst among the 20 biggest economies known as the G20, which includes sanctions hit Russia. The IMF predicts the UK economy will shrink this year, although this is a small upgrade from its last forecast. We have more on 3news.com. That's it for business. We have sports next with Kelvin also answer.
Well, thank you so much, Nana Kiament Brampa. Well, let's get into some sports. And the Ghana Futsal Premier League has officially been launched by the Ghana Football Association. This happened at the premises of the Football Association's office, with 16 teams expected to compete for the ultimate. The tournament, which will see the winner take home 10,000 Ghana cedis, second place 8,000 Ghana cedis, and third place 5,000 Ghana cedis, will be played at the Bauleshi AstroTurfs, as no venue has officially been made ready for futsal to be played. Here is President of the Ghana FA, Ket Okarku.
There's a lot of capacity building opportunities on the table for all active participants. We've offered them the immediate need, i.e. training for instructors, training for referees, etc., provision of the futsal balls, location of the pitches, even though it's not, you want to look at a successful futsal season, a national league being put, a national team being put together, and hopefully competing on the African continent. I think that last year we did that with Beat Soccer. We supported the Beat Soccer national team to the last line of the AFCON. It's unfortunate we lost to Egypt, but I think that was a big start for us, and want to look at futsal football also in that perspective and try to do the right levels of investments.
So that is from the president of the Ghana Football Association, Ket. Moving on, Matthias De Ligt says he has prepared to face Erling Braut Haaland ahead of Bayern Munich's game with Manchester City. Well, it has been very difficult to mark him out of games, but De Ligt believes this will be a very good evening for them in the UEFA Champions League.
I think with Haaland, you don't need so much of video, because I think everybody knows what kind of striker he is, what he does, and still he scores goals, so he's really good in this. So yeah, definitely prepare for a striker like that, but yeah, in the end you also have to play your own game. You have to focus on the things you have to do for yourself, and then I try to see where I can stop him, or in what way we together with the team can stop him.
Well, together they can stop him, according to Matthias De Ligt. But however, Manchester City defender Ruben Diaz on having to play against old mate João Cancelo, who is now with the Bavarians this evening, believes it is going to be weird, but they are focused on advancing.
Confess it will be strange, just because not very long ago we were fighting together, but it is what it is. It's football, it's the life we live, and decisions have been made, and in a way it will be good to play against him and to see him again.
Have you been in touch since the draw was made? Or?
Well, I guess that especially after our time here together, we built close relationship, especially me, him, and Bernardo, and we kind of are always in touch. So yes, we've been in contact.
So that is it there ahead of the big game tonight. Manchester City FC Bayern Munich at the Etihad, 7 p.m. is the time. Same time in Portugal, Benfica will be welcoming Internacional, and Roger Smith says he's expecting the strongest version of Internacional.
Knockout stage, quarterfinal, you have to expect always also the opponent on his top level. So I think for both teams is a very important matches. Both teams spend a lot of energy and focus to reach this round. So we and also Inter are two teams of the last 8 who are still playing Champions League. So of course we expect a top team, very concentrated team, but it's also what we expect from ourselves. So we want to play our best football.
Well, they want to play their best football. That game is also at 7 p.m. now with Chelsea. Ben Chilwell has extended his contract until 2027, a 2-year deal that keeps him at the bridge, and the new coach Frank Lampard in the interim. Now finishing off with some NBA stories. The 2022-2023 regular season has come to a close with 4 of the 8 final round matches which have been set up. The other 4 will be decided by the play-in tournament, as the 2 top sides in each conference will need to deliver. And, the Denver Nuggets and the Memphis Grizzlies from the Western Conference, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics are from the Eastern Conference. Wait to see who they are going to draw. So tonight the Atlanta Hawks will be playing with the Raptors, and as well as the Bulls would also have a game against the Miami Heat. In the Western Conference, 7th seed Los Angeles Lakers will face 8th seed Timberwolves from Minnesota, and then on Wednesday morning, that is the Pelicans will face Oklahoma City Thunder. These games are expected to lead us to the playoffs, which will begin on Saturday, the 15th of April. That will be it for Sports on Hot Edition. Alfred Ocansey, you said your money is on Manchester City.
Absolutely. And it's 3 goals to 1. And so watch out for that. It's my prediction. It's going to happen.
Well, we just wait to see what happens this evening. 7 p.m. is the time.
7 p.m. is the time. Great stuff. As Kelvin also answered that, there's more on 3 Sports across all social media platforms. But before we go here on Hot Edition on 3FM92.7, the UK government has included Ghana, Nigeria, Angola, and Cameroon in a list of 54 countries that should not be actively targeted for recruitment by health and social care employers. This announcement was made by the UK government in its revised Code of Practice for International Recruitment of Health and Social Care Personnel in England, which was published on the NHS Employers website. The code states that some developing countries such as Ghana should not be targeted when actively recruiting health or care professionals. Titled Code of Practice Red and Amber List of countries, the UK said the list is based upon the World Health Organization's Workforce Support and Safeguard List 2023 and will be updated alongside progress report on WHO Globe Code implementation and reported to the World Health Assembly every 3 years. The move by the UK government comes at a time Ghana is battling mass exodus of health professionals. So that's something that a lot of the health professionals, nurses and doctors have been reacting to on social media. What this effectively means is that the UK is not going to recruit or accept applications from health professionals from Ghana. That's exactly what this means. And you recall that the Nurses and Midwives Association has indicated about 3,000 nurses actually left Ghana between January and April this year. So what this means, if you have any dreams as a nurse or a doctor or any health professional of working in the UK, what this statement effectively means is that those dreams may have just been shattered. But we'll see how things play out in the coming days and the reactions, especially from the health professionals in this country. But lawyers for the 6 persons accused of assault of a police officer say their clients only committed a misdemeanor and want the charges and the treatment of the case to reflect the offenses. The 6 suspects appeared before the Fidiasi District Court on Tuesday, charged with 3 offenses. Evan Zinkum was in court for us and engaged counsel for the accused Henry Ohenenkum on this particular development. Take a listen.
6 out of 7 accused persons currently standing trial for their roles on the assault of a police officer will have to meet a bail condition of 10,000 with a surety to be able to walk freely temporarily. because on the 28th of April, they will reappear in court. They were charged with 3 offenses. 1, conspiracy to commit crime, and this is contrary to Section 23, Clause 1 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act 1960. The second charge was assault on public officer, which is contrary to Section 205A of the Criminal and Other Offences Act 1960. The last charge was duty to prevent a felony. Owusu Michael, Thomas Kusi, Yao Boateng, Edward Boateng, Evans Addo,